Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Okay, well, first, we're going to get this down for your title graphic. Can you tell us your name and spell it?
Yes, my name is Thomas Marshall, Thomas Marshall.
Wonderful. And Thomas, what do you do here at IDRA?
Yes, IDRA, the Intercultural Development Research Association. I'm the policy communications strategist here, so I work with press releases and working on pitching news stories, as well as covering all policy communications for IDRA.
Okay, what is policy communications?
Yeah, so in a best way to describe it, it's really working with media as well as trying to convey some of our complex policies to communities, families, and students to kind of uplift our mission of educational equity.
Okay, but what are policies?
Policies are some of the things that we work with within the legislature or all the way down to a school board meeting that needs to change or different policies in schools that may want to change. So for example, a dress code policy that a student may want to change, that's an example of different policies that we could affect.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, well, tell me about, I see that you all do so many great things
Yes.
here. And I do want to talk a little bit about policy since you brought that up. Um, I've heard and I read a little bit about the ending harmful discipline policy.
Yes.
So, discipline in schools is a hot topic, particularly like in Texas, right? What is IDRA's recommendations or stance on school discipline?
Absolutely. So our stance on school discipline is to really end any harmful practices, especially for children and people of color and youth of color specifically. We want to make sure that we're banning things like corporal punishment. There are things in schools where teachers are still hitting children and that is allowed. And so, it's kind of shocking to hear that, but we want to make sure we put an end to different policies like that, as well as over the policing of children in schools. We want to make sure that we can be able to mitigate some of those things that happen within children of color across Texas.
Sure. Well, that sounds really important. So, how can we get involved at the community level to support what you're doing there?
Absolutely. So to get involved in the community level about ending harmful discipline really starts with talking up at local school board meetings. So there's a lot of them posted around Twitter or different social medias or a website that you could go to. That's a really great start to be able to find out how you can get involved in speaking up and speaking out and working with different parents and other students to be able to make sure that you're getting your message across about how you feel about the issue.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I was also reading about funding's a big topic, and especially in Texas, there's a lot of schools now,
Yes.
and then keeping the public in public ed. So I was curious about that. There does seem to be now kind of an abundance of choices for parents, and many of them say they're public schools. And I think at the community level, people don't understand what is and what's not. So I was curious about what is IDRA's point of view on public school funding in general.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great question. Our view on public school funding is making sure that public dollars that come from the state government, local entities like that, are able to be funneled into public schools. And so that means that we want to work with schools that are going to be open and accessible for all students to go through, that parents don't have to pay out money or use different programs to be able to get to those schools that seem very hard and really complex to get into. Based on your neighborhood where you are, we want to believe that that can be the school for you, and so we want to be sure that we are advocating for schools that everyone is able to attend.
Okay. Are there certain schools that, in what you all are doing in keeping the public in public ed, you're finding that are not allowing some certain types of students in, or?
Yeah, no, some schools are making it really difficult to be able to send their students there or being able to have the choices to be able to send them there. And so we want to make sure that we are able to go away from a lot of those schools and making sure that schools are equitably funded and making sure that we're able to have all different types of students and a really diverse group of students at those schools. So that's kind of the main point of how we want to make sure we're keeping that public ed, that public funding in public education.
Okay. Well, what are some things that IDRA is doing specifically to ensure this fair school funding concept for students?
Absolutely. A lot of it comes from our school funding model. So we really want to make sure that using the government's entities that we want to be able to make sure that students are able to go to those schools. So just funneling those dollars, and whether that's advocating at the state legislature or that's getting parents and other students involved to be able to say, why does my school look like this? Here are some more resources that I need. Just recently with the COVID pandemic, a lot of the different funds that came from the government, we did a whole entire study for students and teachers and parents to be involved, and came to us and said, this is what we would like in our school, kind of a reimagining of what schools could look like. And we took those recommendations and provided them to legislators and to other school officials to be sure that, hey, this is what students, parents, and teachers are asking for. Here's what an equitably funded public school can look like.
Well, that's really cool. It sounds like you all, in some ways, are a bridge between the educators, parents, and those who make the policies.
Absolutely. That's a really great way to describe organization, as kind of connecting along with a lot of different stakeholders.
That's great, great. Well, along all that, too, as you all are diving deep, we heard a little bit about Education Cafe, and that sounds like a unique model. So can you explain how parents, schools, and the community get involved in that?
Absolutely. And that's a really great way of describing our Education Cafe model. So our model is based on parent leadership, and not in the traditional sense where it's just parents getting involved in fundraising or doing like school lunch, different events. It's really making sure that parents and students and teachers come together with their community to involve themselves in school policy and the changing of school practices. So for example, we have a great group of women in the San Juan, in the South Valley of Texas, that come together and saw that they needed more bilingual ed programming in their schools, and there really wasn't that need, and that had not happened before. And so they kind of came together to be able to coalition build, work with the school, work with the community, and now there's more dual language programs and bilingual ed programs within their school. And so we really just believe it as a really grassroots effort to make sure that students, parents, families, and all the stakeholder community groups available are able to make those changes that they'd like to see in their schools.
That's great. Well, how are education cafes different from other parents groups that have been around before?
Absolutely. A lot of parent groups previously that you'll see will kind of make recommendations for what they believe that different parents should be advocating for, or what changes should be made. And we believe our parents have power. You know, they have a lot of stakeholder interest, and they have the power to be able to speak up on different issues that are relevant to them. And so we want to make sure that we're giving them that power, and just equipping them with the tools and resources that they need. So whether it's learning about the process of how to go to a school board meeting, learning about making testimony at the state legislature, we want to do those things to equip them to really advance on that power to be able to make those changes in policies and practices.
That's really cool. Are there a lot of these programs throughout the state, or is it kind of in one city or another?
There are. We have numerous programs across the state of Texas, so anywhere from Houston area to the Valley of Texas, like I mentioned before. Here in San Antonio, we do a lot of them as well. So we have numerous ones across the state.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, so valued youth partnership, that's something that we're not familiar with. Can you tell us about the Valued Youth Partnership Program?
Absolutely. So the Valued Youth Partnership Program is a program that equips students that are labeled as kind of at risk or having some challenges in schools, that not necessarily are at risk, but are really just having trouble trying to make their way and understand and make meaning of their schooling. And so we take those students, and they are in the high school range, and they tutor younger students within their same school district. And so it really becomes a great empowering practice for them to be able to feel like leaders. This is some of the first times they've been called upon to be leaders and to work in classroom settings. And so this is their time to be able to have a leadership role, and to be able to tutor young students, and to be able to kind of get that validation that they need, as well as the other students need as well. And creates a nice, a holistic approach for students to kind of do some peer-to-peer mentoring. And we've seen a lot of really, really great accomplishments out of them. And it's been one of the kind of our highest rated programs here at IDRA.
Is there a specific school that does a really great job at this that we should maybe get to know a little bit more about?
Yeah, there's a lot of different schools that do this type of work. So just in the San Antonio Independent School District, we could connect you with a numerous amounts of schools that have been plugging in and really working with our Value Youth Partnership Program.
Great. Okay, I'll take you up on that.
Absolutely.
Great. And then the attrition study, that sounds like a really important report. I understand with the attrition study, is that something you release every fall? What's that study about and why do you conduct it?
Absolutely. So we have a really important study called our attrition study, which makes meaning of the different dropout rates that the Texas Education Agency comes out with every year. It's not necessarily my forte, but we do have a subject matter expert that could be able to connect and talk a little bit more in depth about what findings that we find every year and some of the more kind of things that come up with the attrition study from year to year.
Great, okay. Well, that sounds really interesting, so we'll take you up on that too. And then in terms of, is there anything else we should know about IDRA that helps our community or our viewers here understand what you do and how they can help?
Absolutely. So one thing that a lot of people don't know is we work with policy a lot. And so in the upcoming Texas legislative session in 2023, we really want to make sure we are being that bridge and connecting with families and students about their problems that they've heard in schools. And so we want to make ourselves an open resource for a lot of folks to get connected to, and we have a lot of different legislative 101s in learning how to testify and being sure that folks can get involved in making an impact and a change on a local and a state level as well. Because when we're able to coalition build and build people power, we're able to really make effective change at the state level. So that's one thing I'd love for people to know about us.
To plug in there, that's great too. One thing we've heard a lot about is the critical race theory.
Mm-hmm.
And what the policy is around that. What is y'all's take on that critical race theory, and is that something you might approach in the next session?
Absolutely. So we label things like that and kind of attacks from the far right of calling it classroom censorship. So classroom censorship is really just related to all the various bills or different ways that public education is being attacked right now. And so we want to be sure that we are honing in on some of the honest and truthful and accurate education that we like to see with students and with teachers teaching. And so we are putting our trust in teachers and supporting the students that want to see a classroom where they feel valued and supported in. And we want that for all students. And so we've heard a lot of words kind of been around like that, but we want to make sure that we're calling it what it is and really centering students' ability to learn in the classroom.
Great point. All right. Anything else you'd like to say about IDRA or anything we missed?
I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here today.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Cut.
Cut.